Have you ever poured your soul into a lakeside sanctuary to keep your late wife's memory alive, only for an HOA Karen to email you that it's now community property for her fancy party? What if saying no meant she'd slap you with fake code violations that could bankrupt you overnight? And what if your quiet grief hid the kind of patient, tech-savvy revenge that would make her regret every smug smile she ever flashed? Ethan Caldwell had kept every promise he ever made to Rebecca, except the one that mattered most after the cancer took her. This cabin on Crystal Lake in Harmony Grove, Washington, was supposed to be their forever escape. He finished it alone. Every cedar plank and wide window a love letter she never got to read. The mountains kissed the water. The dock still smelled like the sunscreen they used to share. And for 3 quiet years, it was the only place the world couldn't touch him. Until the email from Karen Langford, Harmony Grove HOA president, arrived like a velvet-wrapped grenade. Subject: mandatory use of your property, Governor's Donor Gala. No please. No sorry. Just Regulation 14.3. Special community contribution events, and a 48-hour deadline to vacate so her VIPs could sip champagne on my dead wife's dream deck. I stared at the screen until the coffee went cold. Karen wasn't some cartoon villain. She was the polished blonde who chaired every bake sale, quoted scripture at board meetings, and somehow always ended up owning the houses of anyone who told her no. I called her office the next morning, voice already shaking. "This is my home, Mrs. Langford. You can't just—" "Oh, Ethan," she cut in, all honey and steel. "We prefer Karen among neighbors. And it's not can't, darling, it's must. The Harringtons are donating 7 figures to the new rec center. Your lakefront view is simply the jewel we need. Think of it as an honor. An honor that includes packing my wife's ashes urn into a storage bin." A tiny pause. Then that signature laugh, light, practiced, empty. "Personal items can be tastefully relocated. We'll even provide labeled boxes. Compliance is so much easier than the alternative. Don't you think?" The alternative arrived by certified letter 2 days later. 3 alleged structural violations on the dock, each carrying a $12,000 fine unless remedied within 30 days. I knew the game. Last year, the Parkers refused her charity auction on their lawn. 6 months later, they sold at a 30% loss. Guess who bought it through a shell company? Karen's husband, Derek, always the quiet real estate guy who just got lucky. I drove to the HOA office anyway, because Rebecca's last words still rang in my ears. "Don't let anyone take what we built. Ethan, promise me you'll stand up." I'd failed to save her life. I wasn't failing this. Karen's office smelled like vanilla candles and intimidation. She rose, manicured hand extended like a queen offering mercy. "Ethan, I'm so glad you came in person. Saves the paper trail." "No vote was taken," I said flatly. I checked the public minutes. Her smile never wavered. "Board discretion, dear. Special circumstances. The Harringtons expect perfection, and your little cabin is perfect." She leaned closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper her secretary couldn't hear. "Refuse. And I'm afraid the dock issues become structural emergencies. Very expensive. Very public." I left without another word. But something inside me clicked from grief into cold. Surgical focus. Before retiring, I'd spent 20 years designing non-lethal perimeter defense systems for critical sites. Sound, climate, visual, scent. All invisible. All legal if you read the fine print. Karen wanted a battlefield. Fine. I'd give her one she'd never see coming. My neighbor Elena Vargas, the high school history teacher who still brought me casseroles on bad days, caught me in the driveway. "She did it to the Parkers too," she murmured, glancing toward Karen's McMansion. "Derek buys the cheap houses after the fines bury people. They call it market correction. I call it theft with a smile." That night, I pulled out the old blueprints labeled Project Sentinel. I wasn't going to hurt anyone, just make them profoundly uncomfortable in ways no one could prove. First, the HVAC, tiny low-frequency emitters hidden in the vents, tuned to the exact hertz that triggers subconscious anxiety without anyone knowing why. Next, the smart thermostat, programmed for slow, relentless temperature creep. Hidden 4K cameras everywhere. Tiny signs posted legally. Premises under surveillance for security. Digital picture frames I could remote control to flash HOA financial spreadsheets instead of family photos. And around the deck, modified mist sprayers that could switch from cooling water to a faint, unmistakable scent of mildew and regret. I sat on the dock at 2 a.m., Rebecca's urn in my lap, and whispered, I kept the promise. Baby, just a little louder than we planned. The next morning, Karen's event planner team showed up with clipboards and zero boundaries. This built-in bookcase has to go, the lead decorator announced, pointing at the shelf holding Rebecca's favorite dog-eared novels. Clutter. Karen herself swept in wearing white linen that screamed, I brunch with senators. She picked up the framed photo of Rebecca and me on our last trip, both of us laughing, wind in our hair, and handed it to an intern like it was trash. Store this somewhere. We want the space aspirational, not personal. My blood turned to ice, but I smiled the same empty smile she'd given me on the phone. Of course, community first. Inside, I was cataloging every insult for the final act. By the time they left, Karen had already texted a list of suggested improvements that would cost more than my annual pension. I spent the next 48 hours finishing the software, linking everything to a laptop Elena would run from her house across the cove. She'd lost her husband to the same kind of bureaucratic bully years ago. She was all in. Let's give Debbie the Karen a party she'll never forget, she grinned. I even ran into the HOA property manager, nervous little Gary, at the hardware store. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. She's cooking the books, he whispered, slipping me a USB drive. Last quarter's administrative expenses, $500,000 vanished. I'm done covering for her. I had the smoking gun. The night before the gala, I packed a single duffel and left the cabin ready. From Elena's guest room, I watched the live feeds as caterers, florists, and finally the Harringtons arrived in their matching Bentley convoy. Karen greeted them on my front porch like she'd built the place herself. Isn't this view just divine? She gushed to Mrs. Harrington. Gesturing at the lake I paid the taxes on. I personally selected this property to showcase Harmony Grove at its finest. Phase 1 began with a whisper only I could hear through the earpiece. Hit it. Elena. The infrasound emitters woke up. Within 10 minutes, Karen was snapping at the caterers for no reason, rubbing her temples. Guests started shifting uncomfortably, complaining about that weird pressure in the air. Karen blamed the mountain weather, but her perfect smile was cracking at the edges. Then the temperature. 5 degrees every 10 minutes. People loosened collars, fanned themselves with napkins. Karen, still in her wool-blend power suit, glistened like a glazed ham, but refused to admit anything was wrong. Harold, Gary, whatever, fix the AC, she hissed. Gary, bless him, pretended to fiddle with the thermostat I'd locked remotely. Karen announced loudly, this is exactly why we need stricter renovation standards in Harmony Grove. A direct jab at the man whose dead wife had helped design every inch of the cabin. Desperate, she herded everyone onto the deck for fresh air. Perfect. Missed on my mark, I murmured. The pergola sprayers activated, gentle at first, then just damp enough to ruin silk and frizz $400 blowouts. Ladies squealed. Men cursed under their breath. Karen's hair started to resemble a wet poodle. She forced a laugh that sounded like a car alarm. Mountain weather patterns are so unpredictable. Back inside. Phase 2. I flipped the digital frames. Instead of Rebecca's smiling face, giant red spreadsheets appeared for $187,000 in office supplies last quarter. Questionable transfers. Falsified minutes approving this very event. What on earth? Mr. Harrington leaned in, suddenly very interested. Karen lunged for the remote. Technical glitch. Gary, shut that off. But the system was mine. Gary just shrugged, the USB drive burning a hole in his pocket. Mrs. Harrington raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. $500,000 on office supplies. Karen, that seems generous. Karen's composure snapped like cheap heels. This is obviously sabotage. Then came the recorded audio I'd secretly captured during her planning meetings, her own voice. Crystal clear over the speakers. The Harringtons are new money. We have to show them how real taste works. And that Caldwell widow's husband is such a sad little recluse. Keeps his dead wife's junk everywhere. Pathetic. The room went graveyard silent. Mrs. Harrington rose slowly. Glacial. I think we've seen enough. Karen spun. Mascara already running from the earlier mist. It's a malfunction. Someone call security. But the young influencer guest in the corner was already live streaming. HOA Karen meltdown. Crystal Lake edition, going viral in 3.2-inch. I gave Elena the final cue. The deck sprayers locked onto Karen alone. A concentrated blast hit her square in the face, enough to ruin the $6,000 suit, plaster her hair to her skull, and send foundation streaming down her cheeks like melting plastic. She shrieked, batting at the water like it was acid. Board member William Pierce held up his phone. I just received Ethan Caldwell's evidence packet. Falsified minutes. Embezzlement. The works. Emergency meeting, now. Gary finally found his spine. She's got private files on every one of you. Used HOA money to hire investigators on new residents. Even Derek Langford, standing in the corner with a scotch in his hand. Look done. Years of cleaning up your messes. Karen, I'm out. The party emptied faster than a fire drill. Karen stormed off soaking wet. Heels squelching. Power evaporating with every step. I waited until sunrise to walk back across the cove. The cabin was a disaster. Half-eaten canapes. Abandoned champagne flutes. One very expensive high heel left behind like a war trophy. But nothing was broken that couldn't be fixed. I sat on the deck. Rebecca's urn back in its rightful place. And felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace mixed with the sweetest, darkest satisfaction. My phone buzzed. William Pierce. Emergency board meeting at noon. She's already lawyered up. But your evidence is ironclad. Cornered animals bite. Ethan, watch your back. I watched anyway. At 11:45 a.m. black SUV pulled up. Karen climbed out flanked by Derek and two rented security guards, thrusting an official-looking but completely illegal eviction notice at me. 24 hours. Mr. Caldwell. Malicious sabotage of a community event. I smiled the same empty smile she'd given me months ago. Why don't you come inside? Karen, there are a few things you should see before you sign that creative little document. Once the door closed, I opened the master laptop. Every falsified minute. Every missing dollar. The video of her casually tossing Rebecca's photo into a trash bag like it was junk mail. I played the worst clip on loop, her voice mocking my grief while she posed for selfies on my dock. You didn't just violate property rights, I said quietly. You desecrated a memory. My wife's last promise to me was this cabin. You tried to turn it into your personal Instagram backdrop. For the first time, Karen's mask slipped completely. A flicker of something that might have been shame crossed her face. Then Derek stepped forward. Voice flat. It's over. Karen. I helped Gary copy those files. I'm done watching you destroy people for status. A knock. William Pierce. 3 other board members. And, surprisingly, Mrs. Harrington herself stood on the porch. We thought we might find you here, William said, handing Karen a single sheet. By unanimous vote, you are removed as president effective immediately. Full forensic audit pending. The Harringtons have already pledged to fund it. Mrs. Harrington smiled the coldest smile I'd ever seen. I'm joining the new board. Time for actual community. Not a personal fiefdom. Karen's world collapsed in real time. The power. The brunch invites. The fear she inspired, gone. She looked at Derek. Betrayal in his eyes hitting harder than any mist spray. I just wanted respect, she whispered. Voice cracking like cheap crystal. Derek took her arm gently. Time to go home. Karen. Or whatever's left of it. They left. Weeks later, the Langfords sold their McMansion at a loss and moved to Arizona. The HOA paid every penny to restore my cabin, new dock, new everything, plus a 6-figure settlement to make the lawsuit disappear. I dismantled most of Project Sentinel. Kept the cameras. Though, just in case. Rebecca's sanctuary was ours again. The sun rose over Crystal Lake the same way it always had. But now the air felt lighter. I started getting emails from other homeowners fighting their own little dictators. I answered every single one. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with a badge or a courtroom. Sometimes it arrives wearing a $6,000 ruined suit and a live-streamed meltdown. And the best part? Karen's final Facebook post before she deleted her account was a single line. Sometimes good people lose. I liked it from a burner account. You know, the cruelest thing about grief isn't the quiet. It's the promise you almost broke. I kept mine. And if some entitled HOA queen ever tries to steal what's left of your peace, remember this. Patience is a weapon. Technology is the trigger. And karma loves a good live stream. Stay petty. Stay smart. And never let them see the trap until it's already soaked them to the bone. Sometimes the people who preach community the loudest are the ones who'd sell your memories for a better view. Keep your promises. Build your traps. And when the Karen finally melts down in front of the right audience, just smile and wave. Justice never looked so refreshingly damp.